Imagine for a second a city, one of the very first in the world. It exists for 2,000 years, a thriving hub of humanity. But then, when archaeologists finally pull back the curtain, what they find defies all expectations, and it kicks off a controversy that's going to rage for decades.
So, here's the big puzzle of Çatalhöyük. We're looking at a 9,000-year-old settlement that pretty much forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization. Okay, let's get into this.
So, where is this place? We're in modern-day Turkey on the Konya Plain. And this isn't just some ruin. It's a huge man-made mound called a tell. It's literally built from layers upon layers of homes over 2,000 years of people living in the exact same spot, starting way back around 7,400 BC. This place is a window into one of the biggest changes in human history, when we stopped being nomads and started to settle down.
Now the architecture here, this is what's so wild. Get this, there were no streets. I mean, none at all. The houses were all packed together, back to back, like a giant honeycomb. So how did you get around? You walked across the rooftops. And to get into your house, you climbed down a ladder through a hole in the ceiling. It sounds crazy, but this design was genius. It was great for defense, kept the homes insulated, and it meant the rooftops were this incredible shared community space.
And once you were inside these mud brick homes, life was, well, it was really intimate. You'd cook on a hearth right under that hole in the roof. You'd sleep on raised platforms. And here's the kicker. When a family member died, they were buried right there, under the floor. Your home was literally a living space and a tomb for your ancestors. You were always physically connected to your past.
So when this absolutely bonkers site was finally uncovered, the first theory about what it all meant was just as dramatic as the place itself. And it all revolved around one powerful idea, the mother goddess.
The guy who found all this was a British archaeologist named James Mellaart. In the early 1960s, his team started digging, and what they found was a world nobody could have predicted. There were these amazing murals of hunting scenes, cool geometric patterns, and most importantly, a ton of little sculpted figurines.
Mellaart zoomed in on these figurines of full-figured, voluptuous women. To him, the answer was obvious. These had to be idols of a great mother goddess, a powerful symbol of fertility. And from there, he took a huge leap. He theorized that the people here didn't just worship a female deity. Their whole society was a matriarchy, ruled by women.
Now, you have to realize this was a massive deal in the mid-20th century. It absolutely captured the public's imagination. The idea that 9,000 years ago there was this peaceful, art-loving society led by women, it was electrifying. But the story was about to take a very, very sharp turn.
Just as Mellaart's incredible theory was basically becoming fact in the popular mind, his own reputation started to completely fall apart, casting this huge, dark shadow over everything he'd found.
It started with something called the Dorak Affair. This bizarre, almost unbelievable story about a mysterious woman on a train and priceless artifacts that just vanished. It was so sketchy that the Turkish government actually banned him from digging there. Then, years later, he published drawings of murals that other experts are pretty sure he just made up. And after he died, investigators found notes in his own study that seemed to show a pattern of making things up.
So, Mellaart's legacy is a total paradox. Was he this brilliant pioneer who found one of the most important sites on Earth? Or was he a forger who got carried away by his own imagination? The problem was, his entire world-changing interpretation of Çatalhöyük was now standing on really shaky ground.
For nearly 30 years, the site just sat there, quiet. But then, in 1993, a new team showed up, and they were determined to look at Çatalhöyük again, but with a completely different philosophy and a whole new set of tools. The new project was led by Ian Hodder, an archaeologist from Stanford. He knew that to get past the whole Mellaart mess, his team couldn't just be looking for cool artifacts. They had to dig for data, and they had to do it with almost painful precision. And this really shows you the difference right here. You had Mellaart, who dug fast,
covered big areas, and made these brilliant, intuitive leaps to find the showstoppers. Then you have Hodder, who did the exact opposite. Slow, careful, almost microscopic work that was all about data. For his team, it wasn't just what you found, but the precise location of every single speck of dirt around it.
Hodder called his method reflexive. It meant recording every tiny detail, sure, but it also meant constantly questioning their own biases and assumptions. A huge part of this was something he called multivocality, which is a fancy way of saying they listened to everyone. Scientists, local villagers, even the modern-day goddess pilgrims who came to the site. The belief was that every perspective could hold a piece of the puzzle. And this slow, careful science, it was about to completely rewrite the story.
Okay, so after decades of this new, painstaking research, what did Hodder's team actually discover? Well, the answers they found challenged pretty much every single one of Mellaart's big, flashy conclusions. Let's start with just the size of the place. Mellaart's first guess, based on how many houses he saw, put the population at a peak of around 8,000 people. I mean, that's an incredible number that made Çatalhöyük a true proto-city, one of the world's very first jam-packed urban centers. But Hodder's team, with their super slow, careful methods, started looking at the data a bit differently. By analyzing all the layers of dirt and trash, they realized something crucial. Not all the houses were being lived in at the same time. What they did was, they'd build a house, live in it for a generation or so, and then they'd fill it in with clean dirt, almost like a burial, before building a new house right next to it or on top.
So, what was the new estimate? At any given time, the population was probably somewhere between 600 and 800 people. Now, don't get me wrong, that is still a huge settlement for the Stone Age, but it completely changes the picture. This wasn't a sprawling city. It was more like a very, very large, incredibly dense and long-lasting village.
And what about the mother goddess, the heart of Mellaart's theory? Well, the new excavations found tons of figurines, but when they actually cataloged and counted them all, a very different story emerged. The vast majority of figurines they found were of animals, mostly bulls and leopards. And of the human figures, most were either male or you couldn't tell the gender. Those distinctly female figures, like the famous one Mellaart found, they were actually pretty rare.
So let's just lay it all out, side by side. The new evidence paints a radically different picture. Instead of a matriarchy run by priestesses, the society looks incredibly egalitarian. No evidence of any rulers at all. Instead of a mother goddess cult, their beliefs seem to center on honoring their ancestors. Remember the burials under the floor? And the symbolism of powerful wild animals. And that famous goddess statue? Modern analysis suggests it's probably a depiction of a respected older woman, a community elder, not some all-powerful deity.
So, after this whole journey of discovery, scandal, and painstaking science, what's the ultimate lesson we take away from this amazing place? You know, the story of Çatalhöyük is such a powerful reminder that our picture of the past is never really finished. It's always a work in progress. New technologies, new methods, they can come along and completely flip our most cherished beliefs on their head. It shows us that archaeology isn't just about digging up treasures. It's about the careful, humble work of interpretation, and most of all, being willing to admit you are wrong.
And that brings us to one last, really challenging question. Çatalhöyük is proof that a large, complex society can last for a very long time, without any kings, without priests, without palaces. It was a community that seems to have been built on cooperation, not on power and inequality. So it forces us to ask, if they managed to do it for 2,000 years, why do we find it so easy to assume that hierarchy and rulers are just inevitable?